Welcome to JTF's show. I'm your host, Jason. I'd be like those people who are just going to bash Buddhism like every single time I do this. This is sort of why really I'm not a Buddhist in general, being honest. I know I did a podcast with this, but I think this is really gonna get more into why exactly I'm not a Buddhist, or why I don't think this was the right thing to do in general. And I'm talking about the time when Buddha could not forgive Buddha story. That's the title of that video which we'll listen to. It's by Dare to Do Motivation. So this is a person that does a lot of motivational things with, I think, Buddhism and other religions, if I'm correct. I could be wrong. So yeah, without further ado, let's listen to the time when Buddha could not forgive Buddha story.
Buddha walked in looking furious. One day, Buddha was in an assembly when a man walked in looking furious. He thought Buddha was doing something wrong. He was drawing a huge crowd and people would just go to him and meditate. He was a restless businessman, and he had found that his children were spending their time with Buddha when they could have engaged themselves in business, making more money, and ensuring their livelihood. He felt that spending 4 hours of their day seated next to someone whose eyes were always closed was a complete waste of time. So the father of the family was very upset, and he said, "I am going to teach this man a lesson." With anger in his heart, he walked confidently up to Buddha. As soon as he approached Buddha, all of his thoughts disappeared, but the anger in him did not dissipate. He was shaking and he found himself speechless. Since he was unable to express his emotions in words, he simply spat on Buddha's face. Buddha, in return, simply smiled. His disciples who were sitting with him were furious. They wanted to react and were ready to jump, but the Buddha's presence didn't allow them to do so. They just couldn't believe someone could behave in such a reprehensible manner with the Buddha. But they couldn't say anything, and this man could not stay longer either. He noticed his action had not drawn any reaction from the people around him, and the Buddha had simply smiled in return. A few minutes later he thought, "If I stay longer, I will burst, I will explode." So he walked away. Once he returned home, he couldn't erase the image of the smiling Buddha from his mind. For the first time in his life, he had met someone who had such an extraordinary reaction to such a disrespectful act.
Now, this is important. He's acknowledging that he did something wrong with the Buddha spinning on his face. Just to tell you guys, remember guys, because I really am going to talk about this and forgiveness in general, and by definition on it in a Christian perspective and other people's perspective, and as well in general. So just to tell you guys that.
He could not sleep all night, and his whole body underwent a transformation. He was shivering, shaking. He felt as though his world had collapsed. So the next day he got up and went and fell at Buddha's feet and said, "Please forgive me. I did not know what I was doing." To which Buddha replied, "I cannot excuse you." Everyone, including Buddha's disciples, were shocked at this reaction. All his life, Buddha had been so compassionate. He had accepted everyone in his ashram, regardless of their past. And now he was telling this businessman that he could not excuse his behavior. Buddha looked around and found everyone to be in a state of shock. So he explained, "Why should I excuse you when you have not done anything?"
And this is the reason, I guess, why this doesn't make any sense. So this person acknowledged, he had time to acknowledge the responsibility that he had, as a person and what he did wrong to the Buddha. And Buddha is saying that he didn't do anything wrong, and here's why for some weird reason.
What wrong have you done that I should excuse your behavior? The businessman replied. Yesterday I came to this assembly, and in my anger, I spat on your face. I am the same person, it is me. Buddha said, that person is not here anymore. If I ever meet the person on whom you spat, I'll tell him to excuse you. For me, to the person who's right here in this moment, you are wonderful.
Because I guess in this way he was a changed man, but this is the problem I have. Forgiveness, asking somebody to forgive you is acknowledging that you did something wrong to them, and you want to pretty much make amends, acknowledge that you did something wrong and that you're sorry, and for you to say, "Oh, that's not you anymore," because you're a changed man. Yes, he might be a changed man, but he still did something wrong. Therefore, he should ask forgiveness or ask an apology for the person that he did wrong. We as Christians know this. When we ask God for forgiveness, we ask him for forgiveness. Not like, okay, we're changed, so therefore God's forgiven me anyways. No, we still need to ask forgiveness if we did something wrong to somebody, and ask forgiveness for God because he made that person and we did something wrong to them. That wasn't Christian and that was wrong in general. So us understanding what we did wrong, and in return in our actions, we say that we're sorry. And the person then who you did wrong to, in a sense of a way, saying it like that, they need to say, well, I forgive you, knowing that it's okay, we can fix this in a sense of a way. That is forgiveness. And for you to say, oh, I don't know that person, you're somebody else, because you're a changed man, in a sense of a way. You acknowledge what you did wrong, being guilty is punishment enough or something like that. Not really. Being guilty in this way is knowing that you did something wrong. I mean, everybody pretty much knows when they did something wrong depending on the person, but most people would know when they did something wrong, they'll feel guilty. That's not necessarily punishment, that's acknowledging that you did something wrong. And you might have, and you want to, apologize, which is good. And that person that you're apologizing should say, I forgive you, we can work this out if we can, depending on what it is. Because again, but for us Christians, forgiveness is just, there's really no exception in a sense of a way. But I'm not going to get into that because I know that could be emotional. I'm not against emotional stuff. I'm just saying I don't really want to get into that because that's very case by case scenario. Especially with forgiveness, it's hard to ask for forgiveness. People usually want to be right in a lot of things, but we need to understand in a mature way that we did something wrong. Therefore, we need to ask for forgiveness or ask for an apology, pretty much. The person who you are apologizing to should say, I forgive you. And we can fix this. But according to Buddha, and I think most Buddhists in general, because they follow Buddhism, I guess they would agree not to agree with that, because, which this person will say later on, which I wouldn't say debunk, but say why that's wrong. He still did something wrong. Anybody else who isn't the Buddha would most likely be like, it's okay, I forgive you, we can fix this, you can meditate with me or pray with me, and we can work it out with your anger issues or something like that. Which, honestly, I wouldn't say it's justifiable for this person to spat on the Buddha's face, but, his sons were businessmen. They are sons of a businessman. And in that time, a businessman usually takes their authority to their sons to be businessmen, so I wouldn't be surprised if somebody told them that they're not doing that they're a person like the Buddha. I would get a little bit angry, but I wouldn't be like that. I'd be like, hello. I mean, I need sons, at that time. I need sons to, continue on my legacy. And, so, I mean, I'm not defending this person. I'm just saying, can you blame him for being a little bit angry? I mean, he has a business, and he's got, bring his business to his sons. He wants to spend time with them. But, I mean, Buddha was a father, but he did run away without even doing a letter. And then we saw his own son for like maybe over 10, 20, maybe even 20 years, or maybe even 30. He names his son, I think, Fitter, which means chains, as in pretty much the love of my son bondage, because I'm bound by the love of me and my son, therefore I need to eradicate it by not spending time with him. So it all ties to what Buddha thinks at the end of the day, which I will talk more a little bit about that later on in this podcast. But let's finish this.
You have done nothing wrong. You see, in life, when do we truly forgive a person?
When they acknowledge that they did something wrong and they ask for forgiveness, and even if they don't, we as Christians, like if they don't ask for forgiveness, we might, vouch for them, say, God forgive them. Because, God could be working on their heart, and maybe 4 or 3 years later, they actually ask for your forgiveness, or they want to apologize, and, you say, thank you, God, for doing that, and you say, I pray, amen, and, you accept their apology, because it might take some time to forgive. It might take some time for somebody to forgive. So you just pray. That's for us Christians and people who want to be Christians. That's how you work those things out. But according to Buddhists here, I don't know what they would do with situations like 4 years of not forgiving somebody, or somebody not forgiving you. So, I don't know, but let's continue. Let's finish this.
True forgiveness is when you forgive a person, and that someone doesn't even know that he is being forgiven.
That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't, yeah, I can forgive them, but, I mean, when I ask for forgiveness for some things, other people can say, and other Christians can say this too, sometimes God would say, when you are asking for forgiveness for what you did, he says, I forgive you already. And in a lot of cases, for me, he still says it's okay for you to still ask for forgiveness, because it shows that I understood that I did something wrong to God or to somebody else, and I asked for their forgiveness, and now I'm asking God for his forgiveness. Even though he already forgave me, it's still better for me and better for God to still ask for forgiveness, even though he already forgave me. That's in general. We know this as Christians already in a lot of cases. That has happened when we are praying to God. He already says he forgives us, but we still want to do it, or he still wants us to do it, so we can recognize that we are being forgiven in a lot of cases. Because that's what it has to come down to. Do you know that you did something wrong? If so, how and when are you going to ask for forgiveness, depending on the situation? And being honest, I think the Bible is the best answer for that question in my own personal Christian beliefs. And in general, I would most likely go for the Bible and not to this, because that doesn't make any sense. Sure, I can forgive them, but I would still want them to ask for forgiveness, or pretty much to apologize, because they still did something wrong. I can forgive them, but did they, in a sense, really forgive themselves? Did they recognize that they did something wrong? If they didn't, I just pray for them as a Christian. I pray for them that they will, and it might take some years, or it might take a second. It just depends if God is working in their hearts, pretty much talking to them, in our instance, way ministering to them about that scenario or situation, or I need to ask for forgiveness, or somebody needs to forgive me. I'm not waiting, I'm not waiting in a sense of a way, but you would expect somebody to apologize, or for you to expect that they want an apology if you did something wrong, or if they did something wrong to you, you would expect an apology. But in some cases, for a Christian perspective, God might work in them for so many years, you might forget, which is okay, but you just let God handle with them in a sense of a way of, talking to them, ministering to them, making it work in them to apologize, or, you know, for you to apologize, or the other way around. Let's finish this. I keep saying let's finish this, but I got a lot to say. But yeah, let's continue.
That person shouldn't feel guilty for his deed.
They should feel guilty because they did something wrong. I mean, we're taught this from what, 3, 6 years old. If you did something wrong, you need to apologize. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. You did something wrong.
This is the right kind of forgiveness. If you forgive someone and keep reminding them about their mistake and make them feel guilty all the time, then in truth, you've simply not forgiven them yet.
Yeah, I think everybody can agree. Remember what you did in 2010? I'm not gonna do that because that's 10 years ago. That's a decade. I'm gonna let that go. Depending on what it is. I mean, I'll let it go, but that doesn't mean I just forget in some ways. And we know the saying forgive and forget. Sometimes you can forget, but other times, like with crimes, you might not want to forget because they might do the same crime. They might falsely apologize, and that's another thing that I'm not going to get into anytime soon. False apologies. I'm not going to get into that.
Guilt itself should be enough punishment for a person.
Guilt isn't really, again, a punishment depending on what it is. It can be used as humiliation and or punishment, but it's usually when it comes to forgiveness. When somebody is guilty, that's just recognizing that they did something wrong. They're recognizing now that they did something wrong, and they should ask for forgiveness in a sense of a way. Because, when people say ask for forgiveness, they usually say that for a deity. So, apology, they should apologize. Guilt in that way for forgiveness is, with guilt when it comes to forgiveness, it's more of acknowledging that you did something wrong and you want to make it right. Forgiveness is making stuff right when somebody did wrong to you or you did wrong to that person. That is ultimately pretty much what forgiveness is. So that's why I disagree with that, what the person said and what Buddha said, and what most Buddhists will most likely say when it comes to forgiveness. They'll point out to this story, which I wouldn't say I would debunk, but I would disagree because fundamentally, in a sense of a way, that's just not true. You wouldn't do something like that. You would, ask for forgiveness and you should accept their apology. It was not a false forgiveness, but usually when somebody forgives somebody or they ask for forgiveness or apologize and you accept their apology, it's not really like a falsely apologize, but some cases they might just lie and say they're sorry but yet do it again. It's a case by case scenario. It depends if they're in addiction of something, or it's hard for them to do it, or they're just a bad person and they falsely apologize. Which, again, I'm not going to get into anytime soon, obviously, but again, there's that. So, I mean, that's a question for the Buddhists, I guess, and the Christians. What happens if somebody falsely apologizes or falsely asks for forgiveness and doesn't change because they're a bad person in general? So, yeah, I guess disagree with what this person said and what the Buddha said, and maybe most Buddhists in general would point to this. I don't think it would be a right thing of forgiveness. And in this case, I don't think that'll be the right type, quote unquote, of forgiveness, even though that's not a type of forgiveness. And at the end of the day, I'm just saying, Buddha sort of, I wouldn't say slap this person in the face, but sort of just disregard their process of acknowledging they did something wrong and want to make it right. And he's like, that's a different person. That just doesn't make any sense. But again, in his life, he pretty much did the same thing. So again, I'm not trying to bash it, but I'm just telling the truth. You could look at his story and look at his teachings. That's why we as Christians usually look at the person and their teachings. Christians usually look at the person and their hearts and what they say and or teach. That's why, Jesus is a religion, he's a person, and his teaching is not religion, it's just his teaching or what he talks about. Because it's true. Yeah, that's all I'm gonna say about that. Yeah. And also look at my YouTube channel. There should be videos there. It's pretty much the JTF show, not the JTF show podcast, because that's what this is, but pretty much the JTF show with Jason Selton. I talk about other things besides Buddhism and stuff like that. So yeah, God bless and have a great day.